Welcome back, friends. You're just in time for the Johnny Bru Show.
What's going on, everybody? My name is John Brookhagen, host of the Johnny Bru Show, and welcome to another exciting episode. We have got a guest that I have been waiting to talk to for quite a long time. But first things first, before we get to Red Wave Nevada 2022, I want to talk about our sponsor, Infinity, the Math Institute, where you don't get more math problems, you get solutions. You can always go to themathinstitute.com or just look them up on your favorite social media or simply Google Infinity, the Math Institute. Now, back to Red Wave 22. We have historically been a red state. A lot of people moved here, whether you're talking about the 90s, the early 2000s, because of the lack of income tax, because of the right to bear arms, because of the low cost of living. And we have turned not only blue, but a deep, deep blue. And we're trying to change that this year. And it starts right up top with the governor's race. And I've been waiting, like I said, for a long time to have a very special guest. Without further ado, let's introduce Mr. Guy Nohra. Guy, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Thank you, sir.
I'm really glad to finally have you on. We saw you at the Nevada School Choice event.
Yes.
That was the first time we got to meet, and I'm really glad you made the time to join us today.
Pleasure to be here.
If we could, let's start out with his extended campaign ad, where you get to know Guy a little bit. Play tape.
Who wants to be Nevada's next governor?
Who is that?
His name is Guy Nohra.
It's actually pronounced Guy. I know it looks like Guy, but it's pronounced Guy. I don't know. You got to ask my parents.
Cue big music. Guy's story started just like any other American story.
On cue music. If we're telling my story, we're telling it right, because facts matter. It didn't really start here. It really started here, where 40 years ago, as a teenager, I trained and fought in the Civil War to protect my people and my faith. Some things, like freedom of religion, are just so important, they're worth fighting for.
You telling this story, or am I?
All right, go ahead.
Guy's parents were so worried for his safety that they sent him to America to finish high school, where Guy quickly adapted. He thrived in the classroom, played on his high school football team, captained the track team, and even joined a rock band called Merging Traffic.
I played the guitar. We were actually pretty good. Played a lot of great 70s stuff that I'm still playing today.
Guy went on to live the American dream, college, then an MBA, and then Guy went on to co-found a life sciences venture capital firm that invested in 180 innovative biotech and medical technology companies that help create critical healthcare breakthroughs and thousands of critical American jobs.
But my greatest satisfaction was helping our youth, using music to give them inspiration, guidance, and support.
He's Guy. He's Guy Nohra, and he's no politician. He's a remarkably accomplished American entrepreneur and job creator who wants to use his conservative values and business know-how to turn Nevada around.
Hey, don't you have something else to do, like a movie trailer or something? Now, it's my turn. I'm Guy Nohra. I want to be your next governor. And I'm going to make you this promise. I am not going to run my campaign like any other. Instead, I'm going to talk to you directly in full honesty and frankness. I'm going to share with you my ideas for turning around Nevada's economy. We're going to manage through this post-COVID hangover, teaching our kids how great America is while keeping critical race theory out, making state government more efficient, eliminating onerous regulations, ensuring our state income tax stays at zero. And it's time to expose the election fraud we all know is there. In other words, instead of asking you for your vote, I'm going to earn it. Talk to you soon.
Well, Guy, you're saying all the right things. I mean, that wasn't a 1 second soundbite. It was a 3 minute soundbite. So it's easy to say the right things. You're going to be with me for 60 to 90 minutes. So
all right.
You're going to have to go off the talking points, and we're going to have to really get to know you here.
That's what I like most.
Well, number one, kudos. You're not in the desert with a gun shooting bottles, or, you know, the typical Republican Nevada candidate is out in the desert and then in the middle of the strip, and you definitely have your own flavor, which I really liked a lot. What went into the making of that campaign ad? I mean, it looks like you had a lot of input, or the non-typical people had a lot of input.
Definitely. So when we started when I started this whole campaign, it was very important for me to be outside the box, because when you're trying to solve problems, you're going to solve them outside the box. So I put the test to the campaign staff, and I said, we're going to do this in a different way. I don't want to bore people. I actually want to get people engaged. And we were very fortunate that we had a very talented crew of people, and we worked on this. It was risky.
Right,
because,
I believe you.
You know, it's your first introduction to the world, and you want to make sure you do it the proper way.
And you're trying something new.
And you're trying something.
You could have done what
different.
everybody else does, and you know
Sure.
it would be okay,
just
but
okay,
doesn't make the
exactly.
splash.
And I knew up front that probably my biggest challenge was going to be name recognition, and I think an ad like this gets you that.
Right.
You know, people kind of go, oh, that's the guy who, you know.
Right, and also people, you know, you hear a lot of people saying, oh, I just want a regular guy, and I want, you know, somebody regular to be in office, but at the same time differentiating from a venture capitalist millionaire
Yeah.
to a regular guy musician, it's hard.
It is.
But when you come across like this, I think, you know, it is mission accomplished to some extent.
Thank you. And it was all about the authenticity, and for people to know who I am. It's tough to do these things, because it's so easy to we like, as humans, we like to put people in boxes.
Right.
And I'm the anti-box candidate. You know, and by the way, I'm not going to put anybody in boxes when I'm governor.
Right.
You always give people a chance to be who they are, what they are.
I just wrote an article. It was titled People Don't Belong in Boxes, Masks Do. That was the name of my article I just published.
I like that.
Yeah, I like what you had to say as well.
Okay.
Before we start getting into the campaign and everything,
Yes.
I've been obviously learning a lot about you, and your story about Lebanon is really, really stark. I mean, you know, it's a crazy story. I mean, you were just a teenager.
Yes.
You grew up in war. And I remember, even as I became more astute to what's going on in the world, and I realized that they're trying to protect us 13-year-olds from nudity on TV, or they're trying to protect us from violence or horror movies. And meanwhile, you have people all around the world, whether you're talking about, Somalia, or you're talking about, the European bloc south of the former USSR, or Lebanon, or Israel, Syria, where these places where children are growing up with bomb shelters in Israel, that they know like the back of their hand.
Of course.
You have war going around, and, we're not shielding 8-year-olds from war when Syria is in the middle of a civil war, or Lebanon's in the middle of a civil war. And you really grew up with the reality of war and the stark reality of what human is, of what the earth, what the conflict that goes on. I got some video that I'm going to play a little bit of while you're telling us. I want you to tell us as more in depth than you've ever told anyone, because I just feel like we hear snippets of your story.
Okay.
For those of us who don't know, Lebanon is a little country just north of Israel that borders Syria and Israel.
Exactly.
So obviously it's a hot spot.
Yeah.
And the Christian, Muslim, Jewish triumvirate right there in Lebanon. Tell us about what it was like growing up, and take a look at the video we're playing. I'm trying to find this video from in Lebanon. I believe you left Lebanon in 75.
75.
This video is from 76.
That's good.
And then you'll see there's a couple of kids that were like 15 years old driving around with these big guns on the back of these things, which really made me think of you. Tell me what you think of when you see this video, and take us back to you as a young teenager in middle school, or what would be middle school in America.
Yeah, it's something that I've always kept personal, the same way our greatest generation has kept things personal. We all have grandparents who tell us,
Right.
well, how did you do World War II, Dad or Grandpa? And
Right.
they don't tell you. I decided that if I was going to serve, that I needed to tell my story now, because it was important that people understand my motivation for serving. I look at these videos and it's sad. I didn't want to go to war. We had lived actually a pretty normal life until I was 13, 14. The war was when I was 15. But it was
And not to interrupt you, but they're showing pictures of the Holiday Inn. And
Yes.
in this video I was watching, they said all the Westerners were going to Lebanon. They were all doing business. It was probably the most modern, nicest Middle Eastern city.
Yes.
And then a year later, it's ruined. So 14 years old, it's almost like New York City in the middle of Lebanon.
Exactly.
And then at 15 years old, it's a complete war zone.
Exactly. I always say, imagine wherever you grew up in the United States, and I always use the example of Chicago because it's in the middle. So it's Michigan Avenue, right? The beautiful long mile. Well, one day it's just normal. Everybody's doing everything. The second day, one side of Michigan Avenue is one side, the other side is the other side, and they're fighting each other. Just you wake up and that's it. It's divided.
Right down a road.
Broadway. You choose the street.
Right.
47.
The Strip, Broadway, Michigan Avenue.
Exactly. Any place in the United
Sunset
States.
Boulevard.
Sunset Boulevard. Exactly. So just imagine how that just happens, and then overnight, that's it. So Lebanon used to be called the Switzerland of the Middle East, and of course, then overnight it just became this war-torn civil war. And for me, my parents were thinking I was going to Boy Scout camp, but I was going to commando training.
Wow.
So in the mountains, that's what we were doing. I did this a couple of times. I turned 15 April 8. April 13, the war started.
7 days after you turned 15 years old.
Yeah.
And then I still can't get my head wrapped around exactly what was going on. I hear it at some accounts say it was Christians versus Muslims.
Yeah.
Other accounts say it was elites and haves versus the have-nots. Was it an economic or was it a religious war, or what was the purpose? What were the factions that were fighting? How did Syria relate to that situation?
It's a great question, John, and you've done your homework, and I always like people who do their homework. So it was a religious political conflict. So Lebanon was created on a compromise, which was that Christians and Muslims could coexist, and they divided up all the important jobs. With time passing,
Almost like equity.
kind of equity, kind of like you get the presidency, we get this, we
Right,
get
right.
the first minister,
As opposed to who's the best for president, who's the best for prime. It's like, oh, well, the Muslims got the presidency, so a Christian has to be the prime minister.
always, and it was the other way around. The Christian always had to be the president, and the president of the army had to be Christian, etc. So it was called the covenant. It was a covenant, and people followed it. But then, as time was going by, demographics changed. And one faction, and this is the Muslims, were thinking, well, demographics are changing in our favor, so we want more. And of course, the Christians were entrenched and saying, no, we're not going to give you more. And then the PLO got involved because the PLO became the military arm of the people who wanted more
Muslims.
power. Exactly. And immediately then the Christians had to defend themselves, which is what I ended up doing.
Right, and you were brought up Christian your whole life in Lebanon.
Yeah, so the Lebanon has 17 sects, but the major ones, they're all Christian and Muslims, but the major one was the Maronite Christian, which is affiliated with the Catholic Church.
Okay,
So
it's
I'm
what
Catholic.
Americans would conflate with Catholic. You were a Catholic in
Exactly,
Lebanon,
exactly.
as opposed to a Baptist or a Christian or a
It was definitely
Lutheran.
Catholic. Exactly. And that's how the thing developed. So the PLO, which was an armed force,
Right.
was going against civilians, which was us, and in order to change the balance of power, and that's how this whole thing got started.
So it basically started with the PLO moving in to defend the Muslims.
Yeah. So the PLO ended up. So after we're doing a history lesson. After World War II, the state of Israel was born.
Correct.
When Israel was born, a lot of refugees on the Palestinian side were kicked out. So they came to different countries. One of the countries
Including
was
Lebanon.
They set up camps, refugee camps, which then became militarized when the PLO decided that they wanted to take Jerusalem back. unfortunately, it looked like Jerusalem, the way to Jerusalem was going to go through the Christian Lebanese, and that's where we were in the way.
Oh my gosh.
That's
And there's just so many different factions. I also know Syria.
Yeah.
Was that the PLO, or was that a separate entity of Syria getting involved?
Hopefully I don't show biases. I want to be a teacher here. You've got a small country where the people are not united. Let's keep that in mind, people.
Right.
People are not united. They're not here, right?
No nationalism.
No nationalism. People don't care. Everybody's got different ideas. So you have a small country where people are not united, and then you have powerful neighbors, Syria,
Israel. Right.
So they always manipulate, because that's what bigger countries do to smaller countries that are not united.
Right.
So that there was always this pushing and pulling going on, and the neighbors always interfered. So Syria was happy when the balance was okay between, believe it or not, the PLO and the Christians. When the Christians looked like they were losing, Syria came in on behalf of the Christians, interestingly.
Really?
Just to
that
keep,
is
you want the
surprising.
balance. You always want to keep that balance, right? You want to keep people off.
Right.
So that's what they did. They got in. And then, people have conspiracy theories. But in general, let me just give you the simple
Right.
explanation. So that's how Syria got involved. Israel, on the other hand, they were, they don't want to be attacked by the PLO from Lebanon. Right.
Right. That's
So
another avenue of attack.
It's like your neighbor fighting the other neighbor from your house.
Right. You don't want to
so-
fight on two fronts.
Right. So they didn't like that either. So they started pushing back from the south up. And everybody gets involved, and everybody picks a side, and everybody decides they're going to protect their side. And then the thing that we want to know is also, when people are not united, alliances shifts all the time, right? One day the PLO was our biggest enemy. 10 years later, they're our biggest friend.
Right.
It's
Well,
just-
the Syrians even a
the
better
Syrian
example.
the
Right.
Syrians is a better example. But this is how these things kind of develop, because it's kind of tactical, and it's very, very cynical politics.
Right.
And then whenever I smell any of that in the United States, I get very concerned. I'm in this race because I started feeling that this was going to start happening to us.
Right.
And absolutely not. And one more time, here I am.
Right. And then you look at Australia or Canada and, the United States itself.
Sure.
This is the kind of things that are going on.
The polarization, polarization happens. The extreme always are the loudest, and then everybody else gets sucked into it. And next thing you know, you've got a big problem.
So you were shooting guns at 15?
Yeah.
Really, rotting out like those videos we were watching.
Absolutely.
You were one of those kids.
In fact, if you looked at, some of the, when I have discussions, obviously, so when we talk about Second Amendment, it's dear to my heart.
You understand.
Because my people would have been destroyed if we didn't have guns.
Not for hunting.
No,
This is
like
right.
the
This is the
deal,
real Second
right?
Amendment.
And that's exactly why it was made. For
Right.
So that people like us
Tyrannical government
could protect themselves. So yes, when I talk to gun enthusiasts or I go to gun shows, I've used every possible rifle that you could find. I didn't have my own. You check in,
Right,
and
they
then
give you your gun.
the rifle for the day and a bunch of ammunition, and then you go to post number 64, whatever.
Right.
And then you go.
And you're 15 years
I'm
old.
15
yeah.
years old.
And then mommy and daddy said no more.
After a couple of months, they decided, because you go out. This is very personal, by the way. So
Thank you.
I apologize.
Thank you for
some,
sharing.
Some of it is.
Please do.
You go out, you come back home, 18 hours later, and you sleep, and mom washes your clothes, and you go back out 7 hours later. So my parents somehow thought that one of these times he's not going to come back, and
Right.
we can't have that happen.
And then
so.
you wonder about these kids going to school worrying about TikTok videos or, racism or some other derived problem that they're putting on the shoulders of these children when they really should just be learning math.
Exactly.
You contrast it with a 15-year-old who actually did have problems.
Exactly. And I never say, I love the fact that our kids here, get to live a normal life.
Right.
And I hope they never ever have to go through what I did. And I'm going to fight for them so that they don't have to.
But at the same time, you look at children who don't face any adversity and they become weaker adults, as opposed to you who ended up becoming the American success story, and you faced the ultimate adversity when you're growing up. And sometimes I'm worried that maybe we're making it too easy on our kids and having too low of an expectation. I don't want to put them in war,
Sure.
but I would like to challenge them and have them, fight for a goal and stuff like that.
every generation wants a better life for their children, luckily, and this is worldwide. But to weave this into a little bit what I want to do, I would not be at all opposed to having some kind of civil service for every kid who graduates at 18. Something. It could be the military, it could be teaching, any talent,
social work,
any talent that you have, give back. Because
Right.
then you realize how important that is. And that's, these are the kind of things that I want to work on and develop as a public figure, as a governor.
Right. And then so your parents said no more, and they shipped you off to the United States.
They did.
Was that the first time you had ever set foot in the United States?
It was.
What was that like? I mean, did you fight them on it? Did you want to come? I mean, tell us how that happened.
I didn't want to come because I had a job to do.
Because you believed in the cause.
Absolutely. It was protecting my people.
And that's what you wanted to do.
My neighborhood, my religion, all the things that are important to me, the way I feel about now, is
Right.
protecting our people and our state. But anyway, so...
Kicking and screaming, they sent you off.
It was a particular bad event that had happened a couple of days before, so I don't even remember... I couldn't
Lucidly,
speak.
right.
I couldn't speak. Who knows, PTSD, crazy things. And I know what had happened, but at the time I couldn't articulate.
Right.
So, but to tell you, I tell the story on the stump. So we fly to London, and we go from London to Seattle. There's a Pan Am flight, London to Seattle.
Right.
I land in Seattle. This is July, August. Beautiful.
Of 77, 75?
75.
75.
Beautiful blue water
Yeah, the
everywhere.
Pacific Northwest.
Green everywhere. I'm like, God, America's a pretty place, and I get in, and you're a little kid growing up overseas, and you have a certain image of Americans, and it's what you see on TV. But the gentleman who stamps our passport is an Asian American, and he's like, "Welcome to the United States." Click. And I'm like, wow, where am I?
Right.
But the reason why this is so important for me, because I've heard other politicians who are on the other side that say they came to America and it was such a mess, and I'm like, this is the most beautiful place, So then I go from Seattle to San Francisco, and I end up in Alameda.
Another beautiful city.
Another beautiful
It was
city.
then, at least.
But then, in Alameda, California, where I had an aunt who lived there. So my aunt, the second I got in, hid my passport, put it away. So any thoughts I had of escape were gone. So now here I am.
And now hearing about how you're passionate was probably a good idea. You might have tried to
Definitely
go back and fight.
No question. I had a job to finish.
And then what happened in Lebanon?
After me?
Yeah, after you had left.
The Civil War went on until the mid-'80s.
14 years, right? 1989, I think I read.
Went
And
on
I
for a long
read
time.
Lebanon has been at war since forever.
Since forever, yeah. It's just always different factions doing different things. The war went on. At the end of the day, if you look at it from a political perspective, the Christians lost political power. The presidency was weakened. The prime minister was strengthened. And all of the government positions, which were 55-45, became affirmative action.
90-10
became 50-50.
Ah.
Yeah, it wasn't that bad.
Oh, to equity.
Yeah.
And your parents, they came out of it unscathed?
My mom came with me and my sisters initially. My dad had to stay there for a couple of years, and he joined us 4 years later.
And he continued to fight until he joined you, or was he too old?
No, he kept back and forth. He would take that flight all the time, and he would be here with us to visit us. And then we didn't have PayPal and Venmo back then,
Right.
so we had the assets that we had. We couldn't just
Whatever you could
send
fit
them.
in your pocket.
So my dad had. So it's interesting. My parents were very comfortable when I was growing up, but for 2 years in my life, I had my mom, who had never worked a day in her life, became a hostess in a restaurant. I was mowing lawns, parking cars, and playing in a band to help pay for my family.
Right.
And
going to school?
Oh, of course,
what was it like going to an American high school?
So it's funny. You're giving me these great softball questions because I use that when I'm speaking on my stump speech.
No.
So,
The Johnny Bru Show only asks the tough questions. Don't listen to him.
Well, okay. So imagine, Catholic. I'm going to a school in Lebanon where I wear an outfit, much better than this T-shirt. I'm wearing a shirt and a tie and pants, and I follow my teacher to class, and I sit down, and nobody makes any noise, and they teach you, and then you get up and you follow the teacher to the next class.
I'm a teacher. Right? Boy, this sounds like paradise.
It's paradise.
For a teacher, at least.
Okay, so now, I'm a sophomore in high school, public school in Alameda, boys and girls, trying to get to my locker, and Bob Kleinhans and Kathy Roberts are making out in front of my locker.
Bob,
Kathy, anyway, right? So first I'm like, excuse me, just the shock.
Right.
The shock.
So foreign to you.
Just but as I'm doing this, I'm meeting all these my high school buddies.
Peers, right.
And guess what? They're Swedish and German, Irish and Mexican, Filipino, you name it.
Right.
And here I am.
All the colors of the rainbow.
This mixed kid, right? Because on my family's side were Lebanese, a little bit of French and Italian. My mom's Italian. So here I am. I'm like, I can belong for once in my life, because I'm a little too dark for Europe and very light for Lebanon.
For the Middle East.
Right? Yeah. So here I am. I can finally belong somewhere, and that's it. American dream. You saw the video. I tried out and made the football team. I was on the track team, and I joined Merging Traffic, the band, because this was what you did to be an American.
Oh, what did you do in football?
I was a running back and a defensive back.
Really?
I was fast.
Really?
So yeah, this is quick pitch to me, and
And let's see how fast you could run.
Follow the fullback and just go.
That was your only job. Follow the fullback.
Yes.
And you, I'm guessing you ran the 100 and 200 or something, if that was your specialty.
And the relays, yeah.
And you loved it?
Oh, it was again, belonging became very important to me.
Right.
I wanted to be an American.
And that was the thing that before the past couple of years have come about, even whether you're talking about the armed forces or the police department, or most specifically athletics, there's no racism, there's just a common goal of winning and who's the best man for the job, and if they get hurt, the next man's up.
Exactly.
It was beautiful meritocracy.
And the thing was, for me too, was that I was, this was in the 70s, so things were still a little tight. But, people would talk to me, like, in a football game, I'd get hit by somebody and they'd say, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, what is this guy saying? I don't even know what the guy's saying.
You're probably better off that way.
Much better off. But then we became friends.
Right.
And even this was junior year, so senior year, we play against the same team. And they're calling me Pierre, because I'm French.
Right. And they thought they were making fun of you, and you're thinking, oh, yeah, okay.
I'm French, my name is Pierre. But anyway, so it was just an amazing experience in Americana for me.
Right. And being teased a little didn't break you. That's one thing now, with the kids. Of course, I'm anti-bullying. I don't want to see anybody get their feet. But a little good-natured ribbing or calling you Pierre, it's not going to destroy you,
Exactly. And it took me a long time, but I had to come back, and it worked out, So,
Well, you're a smart guy. You probably went home and figured out a way to win that, too.
The cartoons. I was like, oh, I got it.
Whatever Yosemite Sam's saying.
Exactly.
Awesome. And then, did you continue athletics as you went into college, or did you concentrate more on academics?
I did, actually. I made the lacrosse team at Stanford, even though back then it was an East Coast game.
Yeah, because we played a lot of lacrosse. I'm from New York,
okay,
and we had but people don't even know what lacrosse is.
Yeah, we did. I did that at Stanford. I was lucky, but it was all about school and it was belonging. So I joined the fraternity one more time.
Right.
And
what did you study?
I studied.
And how'd you get into Stanford? I mean, you only have 2.5 years of high school under your belt. So you got great grades, or?
So this goes to the issue here, how are you going to become governor? No one knows who you are. How are you going to get into Stanford? You're a public school kid.
Right, you're a refugee who's been here for 2 years.
Exactly. Well, the way you do it is you don't believe there's an obstacle. No obstacles. Nothing is in your way. You just go out and you do it. I hand wrote my applications. People laughed at me. Because everybody had the typists and they had the special counselors to do their applications. I hand wrote it. One game in football, I got 126 yards on 6 carries. Okay, that's good. I'm in a band called Merging Traffic. Oh, that's good. I speak 4 languages. There I was.
See what happens.
So and this is exactly what this campaign is all about. Don't tell us what we can't do. Tell us what we can do. As the governor, I'm going to tell people what they can do, not what they can't do.
Right.
Everybody, any age, any place, no matter what. So that was.
Well, we're going to address this when we get into the campaign, because you're going to have to get more than 1% of the vote.
Yes.
And we're going to figure out how you're going to do that.
I can destroy that poll, by the way.
All right, good. Save it. Save it in your back pocket. We're going to get to that.
Okay.
So you went to Stanford, and what did you study?
I studied the history and a lot of economics.
So history, world history, national history,
Actually, it
both?
was European history. So European with a little focus on Central.
Right.
So I was just interested in that part of the world.
Is that everything from 5,000 years ago, ancient Greece and Rome, or is
No,
that
it
more
was-
like
that
modern
would have been more
history?
the classics. It was more the modern history.
Past 400 years.
Past 400 years.
Discovery of America, yada, yada, yada.
Crusades, all the way to, of course, World War II.
Right. And then history, that led you to end up going for your, was it doctorate or your master's
I
at
got
the
my
University
master's,
of Chicago?
5 years later. So I worked for 5 years.
Oh, so you graduated Stanford
Yeah.
and worked.
Yeah.
What did you do?
I was actually selling medical equipment in Asia. Out of the only language I didn't speak.
That's the
Right?
continent
So-
you go
so-
to.
Exactly. So I ended up selling medical equipment in Asia. I was a product manager for a company. And my territory were ASEAN all the way down to Malaysia, Singapore.
And that's amazing perspective, to grow up in the Middle East, to study European history, to live in America, and then work in Asia.
Exactly. And it was just a great experience. I learned the medical space that way, which was really important. And then I wanted to become CEO of a medical company. And that's when I went to get my MBA.
So you went. So you worked for 5 years,
Yeah.
primarily in Asia, selling
Yeah.
medical equipment.
Exactly.
And then you decided you want to open up your own company.
Yes.
And the first step to doing that is to get your master's.
Exactly.
So you went to the University of Chicago.
Yes.
And what did you major?
There it was economics, finance, and like marketing. And even
Right.
it was like one of those.
And then even like I'm a teacher, and I
Yeah.
realize that so many teachers, so many of my peers, they go to high school,
Mm-hmm.
they go to college, and then they go back to a school in order to teach children.
Yes.
And now you are going to the University of Chicago for your master's. I'm guessing
Yeah.
you're 26, 27 years
Exactly.
old.
I was 27
You
year old.
grew up in the Middle East.
Yeah.
You studied Europe. You lived in America. You worked in Asia. Do you feel the difference of somebody with such worldly experience being surrounded by other kids who are probably 23 or 24? They might not be too much younger than you,
Mm-hmm.
but they are so much more sheltered than you. I mean, between their efforts in classes to
Sure.
their understanding of the world around them, what was that like?
Well, it's interesting. There's a little bit of self-selection that takes place. So when people apply to these schools, they're usually pretty ambitious and,
So you're surrounded by better
they've
kids
done pretty well.
anyway.
Yeah,
You're in a
absolutely.
master's program. You're not at the community college.
Exactly. So these were very, very smart people with very strong ambitions, and so never felt,
I still believe your experiences must have set you apart, though,
it
from
was
some of the
different.
academics.
But this is an interesting thing. So the track, again, I'm going to make an analogy here. The track is, you become city manager and you become assemblyman and then you become governor, whatever, right? Well, the track there was you went to investment banking or consulting and then you went to MBA and then you did more of that same thing.
Morgan Stanley,
That wasn't
Wall
my
Street,
track.
right.
I was selling stuff and, medical
Right.
stuff, So again, I had a different track than they did and they had their own track. So that we were different that way.
Right.
Like they had done it by the rules or whatever conventional rules are, and I had done it by, I'm going to be selling stuff in China. When China, you can even brush your teeth with the water because it's 1983,
Right.
right?
Right.
People still wearing Mao jackets.
Right.
When I was
Their
doing
modern
it in China.
revolution only
Had
started
just-
in the 90s, 2000s.
Exactly. So that was the other thing too. So I was different that way too, and it's
And
fine,
an appreciation for things.
Absolutely, always.
Wow, that's super interesting. So then you graduate the University of Chicago,
Yeah.
step down, level up, and then you wanted to start your own company. Were you able to do that right away?
No.
I mean, obviously, you need some money, right?
Yeah, I became a venture capitalist, but as a
What does that mean? Well, I mean, I understand venture capitalists, philanthropy, investments,
Sure.
taking bets. What is a venture capitalist?
So that's a good question. It's now a very big industry. What you do is you raise, and I'm just going to explain to you my side. You raise a lot of money from institutions.
You make that sound so easy.
It's not.
Oh, okay.
Fundraising is never easy. And then you invest it in startups. So two very bright medical people out of Johns Hopkins and MIT.
Right,
They have
like
an
you, who
idea-
want to start their own business, but they want to
They're
cure
PhDs in
cancer.
sci- Exactly. Cure cancer is exactly the best example. They want to do something in cancer. So they go and they put together a business plan and they come to people like me and they say, this is my
They
idea,
pitch
this
it.
is what I want to do. They pitch.
Like the Shark Tank.
Like the Shark Tank. Exactly, but for life sciences.
Right, more technical, though, so it's
For
not
life
good for
sciences.
TV, maybe.
Exactly. Well, actually, it would be great because, my gosh, we all have health problems, and we all have
Right,
live
we
with
could
it,
all relate
and
to
we
the
all
medical
know somebody
field.
who has. So that's what they do. They come to us. We invest in what usually is a seed round. Then we do a first round and a second round, and until we
Right, so you're not going to commit to the whole process, because if they're
You don't
smoking
know.
pot and not doing their work, you're not going to get the next level of funding.
and more concerning, it's not that, it's more like science in a petri dish is much different than science in a human body.
Right.
So sometimes it works in a petri dish, but it doesn't.
Or
say
a
it.
mouse,
or a
or a dog,
Thank
and then you get to the
And then you have to put
human.
in and then you have to be safe because there's an FDA regulation you have to follow. So
Well, you
we're
kill
with
a
them.
mouse,
We're
it's
with them the
okay.
whole way. We don't stop until we exit at the end. Hopefully, I call it bench top to body.
Right.
Is what and we're with them the whole way. We keep investing. Hopefully, at some point, we have a success. One of our companies did actually cure a very rare blood cancers, and that was a big successful.
And what is that?
investment.
Is it gambling? I mean, it's an
It's-
educated game. Like you want to find 20 companies and hopefully one of them hits it.
So the venture capital data is usually in life sciences. You do 10, maybe 3 to 4 work. Now in IT, which is Google and Facebook and these guys, you do 10 and 1 works.
Right.
So they have a much higher failure rate, but
Right.
also much bigger
I would
returns.
imagine, right?
So to us, it's 1 to 4 work out of 10. So that's what you do. So things will fail. Science fails, unfortunately. It moves very, very slowly. So that's what we did, and we get part of the outcome when
Right.
it's successful. That's how venture capitalists get recompensed.
Right, like you give them $1 million to
Yeah.
start up, and then if it keeps going, you give them another million,
Exactly.
But you got 25% of the profits.
Exactly. Usually it's equity. You own equity in the company.
Right.
So you own a piece of the action of the company, and then when it goes public or gets sold,
Right.
you get your piece of that.
So before you made your first, say, $1 million, I mean, for those of you who are watching, I don't know if anybody's done any research, you're listed as being worth $500 million.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Is that true? I mean, sometimes they say these things, but you own 3 houses, and meanwhile, you're not going to sell your house,
One thing I learned about being an American is you don't talk about your wealth, and you don't, and in my case, you don't show it.
Well, until I looked that up, I never had any idea. You seem like a pretty
I'm
typical
blessed,
guy.
I'm blessed, and I never take it seriously.
Just keeping score.
What I've
It's
been
a number?
What I've been given by God, I don't take it. Yeah.
And then, but how does that work now? So, did you invest in 10 companies and one of them hit big? And I mean, just some idea.
We invested, so I started my own fund. I started in 1989. I joined one company as a low level,
Venture capitalist.
associate. Yeah.
Right.
And then 7 years later, I started my own fund called Alta Partners. At Alta, we invested in 180 companies.
Right.
Okay.
And what's a typical investment?
Amount of money?
Yeah, like $1 million each?
It ranges, well, the money kept going up, but let's just say it ranged from, first investment was between $500,000 to $10 million, and then 10 years later, when the fund was 10 years
You
old,
reevaluate.
that number had gone up from $2.5 million to $30 million per company,
Right.
just because companies took more money. The stage the industry was developing, so that's what we did. So I had my firm that I started. We ended up investing in 180 companies. A bunch of them went public. A bunch of them were sold. A bunch failed, but that's what happens in
Right.
the world. And then we got a piece of that action.
And then
it was
basically, I mean, the
successful.
best thing for you is when a company goes huge and then
Yeah.
they sell.
Of course.
That's when the cash starts rolling in.
Or they go public.
And then the people who have been investing in your fund,
Exactly.
they're also getting that money.
They get their money before us.
Right.
That's the key. So they get their money first, then we share in the profits. So that's how it works.
And was this you alone, or did you have some partners?
I had at the peak of my firm, we had 10 partners. So when people talk about how can you manage a state and the legislature and so on, try managing 9 venture capitalists.
And these are
know.
brilliant dudes who all have egos and goals and everything else.
Who think they're the smartest people in the room,
Right.
just like politicians. Yeah. But so you can I know how to manage that because I was the founder and the administrative partner among other things. So that's what it was. You're right. At our peak, we were 10 partners.
Wow, that's so interesting. And are you still part of that company?
No. So I decided that I was going to look for the next thing I wanted to do in my life, and my passions are my job. My other passion is sports, and my other passion was public service. Why? Because all of these things are always at the margin. You win and lose.
Right.
By inches in sports, correct?
Right.
And in venture capital, you win and lose by how many patients go what direction. In politics, you want to lose by how many votes go in what direction and what kind of wave is looking like.
Right.
So these were my passions, and so I started looking at doing different things.
And if I'm not mistaken, you made most of your money less than 10 years ago. Like you've been working for years, and I'm sure you were doing pretty well.
Yeah.
But
That's
you
about
know,
right.
but you hit the stratosphere about 10 years ago,
10 to 15,
and that
yeah.
was one particular company that went public or got sold.
In our case, in the venture capital business, it's usually one company. We ended up with a strategy of diversification, where we had more than one that were successful. But not as big as some of the other ones. Although we did have the biggest
Right,
one.
you didn't hit the lottery,
Yeah.
but you had second place in the lottery in like 10 different companies.
Exactly. And it's not, I wish I could take credit for that. I think it was just the culture of the firm, and that's what
Right,
worked
I
out.
mean, luck, they say the harder you work, the more luck you seem to get.
Absolutely, always. And I always tell entrepreneurs that. So I serve entrepreneurs, I'm there for them.
Right.
And, that's what we do. We don't take ourselves seriously.
I know an entrepreneur that could change the world.
That's what, and my job is to coach them and help them. And I don't just help do them in my space. I do them anywhere they need.
It's unbelievable. It's beautiful. One thing that you don't do is you don't talk a lot about your family in your campaign ads. Some people, that's a pet peeve. Others like to see the kids and stuff like that. You have a wife and 2 daughters, is that right?
I have no wife. I'm divorced.
Okay.
But I have 2 beautiful daughters,
And-
35 and 25.
Oh, look at that.
They're amazing.
And what do they do?
My older daughter she's in Europe. She lives in Europe, and she was involved in fashion, and she does a lot of her own business endeavors right now.
Right.
She's not in fashion anymore. And my youngest daughter makes games. She's a gamer.
Really? And writes code and stuff like that?
Yeah. Even though she's a liberal arts major, she does the whole thing.
Liberal arts,
Yeah, but
computer
she knows how to code.
programming, gamer, coming from a super conservative family.
Yes.
That's great. America, right?
That's America. Again, here we go.
All right, so as we talk about more specifically your campaign, some of the things you like to talk about is, first of all, the economy.
Yes.
Obviously, a capitalist, venture capitalist, you would know a lot about macroeconomics as well as the microeconomics of a company. First of all, what does your experience on the macro and microeconomic stages give you an advantage over the typical person, and how does that relate to a state's economics and what we can do here to provide a better quality of life?
That's great. So this is even better because I won't have to do my pitches this way. So when you think of why am I running for governor? Because that is the one executive position in all of politics. You're running something. If I'm choosing the chief executive of my state, I want someone who knows how to run a business, who understands budgets.
Right.
How budgets come, who understands the numbers when they look at them, who understands business development, which in our case is diversification. So these are the skills that you want. Who understands how to manage people? We just talked about managing venture capitalists. Well, I have 17 departments reporting to me. I have a legislature I have to work with. So you have to know how to manage. And you put all these skills together, you end up as a venture capitalist with I think the perfect combination of skills.
Right, from working with the FDA to working with investors to working with people you're investing in. I mean, it's quite diverse.
The whole gamut. Sometimes you need to be the number one cheerleader. In my case, I'm going to be the number one public servant, but people that work for me in the state are going to be working for the public as well. And I'm going to make sure when they do a good job that they're recognized by the boss.
And that's huge
Always.
in every company. I mean, and there's so little of it.
Could you imagine how proud a government employee would be if I called her up and I said, you gave this company their permit in a day instead of 6 days. I am so proud of you.
Here's the key to the city.
Give me a high five.
Right.
Just little things.
Right.
You know how proud they're going to be?
Right.
And then you know what? What's going to happen to the culture of the whole place? Oh my gosh. Sally did it
The
in a day.
boss is watching, right?
The boss cares. Sally did it in a day. I wonder if I can do it faster. Just make life easier for everybody in our state.
Right.
That's what
Gary
it's about.
Loveman, he used to run Southwest Airlines, and then he
Oh,
ran
yeah.
Caesars Palace. You know Gary Loveman?
Well, they were a case study in business school.
Oh.
Southwest was.
Oh, really? So
Yeah,
maybe
yeah, yeah.
you know exactly what I'm talking about, because I'm a big believer in what he was saying. He was preaching to the choir when I heard him speak one day about, too many CEOs are worried about keeping their customers happy. You make your employees happy.
Guess
If
what?
they have a great culture and a great work environment, they will simply make the customers happy.
Exactly. If you treat everybody. So that's what I learned about being with entrepreneurs. Everybody will do so much for you for less if you just treat them properly.
Right, show some
and you show some
appreciation.
appreciation, and that's what you try to do. So as a manager, that's what you try to do, and as a leader, that's what you try to do. So when it comes to economy, obviously you want someone who understands the economy. I also know diversification. When I'm pitching, okay, so what happens now is companies are leaving California because of the craziness over there. Well, guess what? Do you want me to? I'll ask my economic development people. Do you want me to go pitch with you, or do you want to pitch and I'll close? You tell me what you need. I'll do it.
You know how to
And
close.
When I talk to the CEO, I look at the CEO and I say, we can have the same terminology. We can talk about exactly what they need, and I'll say why our state gives them that, and how our state gives them that.
Well, I mean, and we're going to get into education in just a
Sure.
second, but I mean, I think that has a lot to do with it. One of the biggest problems with Nevada, whether you're talking about 2008 with the financial crisis and the bad loans, talk about 2021 with the instituted government lockdowns. We are such a one-trick pony. I know we have mining, and I know Amazon just opened something, but we're hospitality.
Yes.
And when the economy goes in
Yeah.
the toilet, that's it. I mean, we're done. We have nobody visiting. We have nobody who's liquid to gamble. We have nobody who's looking to pay $200 to see a Cirque du Soleil show when they're barely getting food on the table. And now we have inflation, high gas prices, potential war with Russia or Ukraine and all this stuff. And if we're only going to be focused on hospitality, one day we're not going to be able to get out of these ruts we keep putting ourselves in. But at the same time, how are we going to get Tesla to move to Nevada when only 13% of our student population is literate and mathematically aptitude?
And that's where again, complex problems being solved hopefully by the smartest people. I always say when Vegas gets a cold, the rest of our state gets pneumonia. Right?
Right.
And we never learn. It happened in 2008. It happened again. It happened recently. I think we need to put all of our heads together and say, how do we make this? How do you diversify? It's a very basic business concept.
Right.
Diversification. So that's what we're going to be working on, and that's why I talked about economic development of different.
Well, do you have some ideas? What kind of industries would you like to see Nevada bring in?
Play your strength, right? So, our gaming industry. Just imagine if we get into some of the downstream gaming of video games
or online
poker, online sports. There's so much you can do, and there's so much talent in the city that understands how to do this. Correct. So that's one thing. It's just a little extension. You do it by venture fund. You do it by private-public work together.
Right.
There's so many ways you can do this. That's one. We have. You said mining. We have minerals and here in our state that are crucial to 5G and beyond.
And no one else has them.
So instead of taxing the mining companies, why don't you work with them and give them some R&D credits, and let's get better jobs for them going.
Right.
And then you jump right into supply chain. We don't want to depend on China for the rest of our lives. We've learned that lesson.
I want to know, why won't Biden or why won't you as a governor open up a microchip plant here?
Right here. It's very complex. I think Arizona just got one, and I think Texas got one. It's a lot of work. And notice these two governors are red governors that are friendly to business.
Right.
We don't have that here, unfortunately.
Right.
But we will when it's my turn. So the chips is as we say in business, it's a long sales cycle.
Long haul, right.
So a long sales cycle, but it happens if you're committed. And we have enough now up north, and we can get some down here. But actually, chips are a good industry here. We can actually expand on it. It's I think it's number 3 or 4, but we're right in here.
Really?
Yeah. It's people don't know that, and again, it's like because we're always so dominated by one thing. So again, just think about this. We have plenty of good communication infrastructure, freeways. So supply chain, I would have a project within the state, or maybe have the business school kids at UNLV and Reno and so on.
Right.
Go in and say, tell me how we're going to get some supply chain stuff right into here, right into our state. Let's do a project together. Let's work on this. We can, we will. There's a lot to do, but I have a lot of energy. So to answer your question.
Right. I mean, only because these kids, instead of building roller coaster models, maybe they could be building business models.
Exactly. And we'll do that. We'll get everybody involved.
That leads us to education.
And that will help us. Exactly.
So you take that naturally. I mean, how does education, I already explained how
Yeah.
not having an intelligent workforce would be a detriment to bringing in new business.
Yeah.
How do we improve education? Because back in the 80s, we were a good educational school district. And as we became more blue and
Yeah.
more progressive,
Yeah.
I mean, we've been at the bottom barrel, 48, 49, 50, sometimes even we're 51, which, you know,
Who's
right.
doing that? Yeah,
That's how good we are at math. We're the 51st state out of 50. I mean, that, you know, that just proves how bad at math we truly are. That's my joke, you know.
and
not
coming-
everybody gets it.
Well, coming from you as a math person, you know, that's a big indictment.
You know, I have plenty of ideas, but this
Okay.
is not me interviewing myself.
Sure.
You tell me, what are your ideas to change the landscape and the perception of education and the results, most of all, the results of education?
You know, it's such a problem. You know, we all. And the funny thing is, everybody talks about it. To me, what's so strange coming from my world to this world is like, we all know what the problems are, right? You know, like you say, 48 or 50, it doesn't really matter. So. First of all, I invested in Power to Parents myself in the initiative.
Yeah, I was going to actually bring that up. Yeah, we had Erin Phillips on
yeah.
last week or 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And she was unfettered. I didn't dig it out of her. She said, oh, you know, we've been getting great support. And by the way, you know, this one guy, and she didn't know that I had met you, Guy Nohra, you know, had contributed, I think it was $25,000, which gave them a great head start. And she was super appreciative. So you're obviously, and I also met you at the school
at the
choice
school
event.
choice, exactly,
Actually,
exactly.
you want to play that? This is Guy Nohra with me at the school choice event. This might have been the first time I met you.
It was the first time.
Awesome.
I met.
Play
Yes.
tape.
And
Who we ran into, Guy Nohra, candidate for governor of Nevada on the Republican ticket. Welcome, Guy. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
And first of all, we've been talking about you on the Johnny Bru Show. You had a nice showing at the governor's debate. I see you here at the school choice. How's the campaign going?
The campaign's going really well, considering that we started behind everyone because we didn't have a lot of name recognition. Right now, you know, our debate performance was really, really appreciated by a lot of people. And I don't know if you saw last week, we placed very high also in the fundraising. And in this business, the politics business, which I'm not a part of, I understand that fundraising is really important. So we did well in that as well. So.
Indeed, indeed. And then what I wanted to know is, why are you here at the school choice event?
My gosh, school education is the number one issue in the state right now. And it's kind of inversely proportional, right? We're 50th, so it has to be the number one issue for every person who's serious about solving problems in the state.
Well, and on the Johnny Bru Show, that's what we're always talking about. What people really want to know, the question I get asked about you all the time is, when is he going to be on the Johnny Bru Show?
Well, I'm going to be in the next couple of weeks. I'm spent most of my time down here, even though I live in Reno. And as one of those Saturdays, I'm going to be on your show for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the people, preferably about education?
You know, number one, school choice. I think that's very important. The money following the kids is very, very important. In my case, I'm going to be listening a lot, and I'm going to talk to everybody, and then we're going to make some big decisions that are going to move things in the right direction.
So more like a CEO.
Absolutely, just like a CEO of a company with a big problem, which we have in education. And I'm very, very gratified at how many people there are here today. It's amazing.
This is an amazing event.
People cannot not pay attention to this. This is real, but I'll tell you that people can talk about it. Who's going to solve it the right way? You know, you need somebody who's had the CEO and very complex problems to solve.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, let's get to work and good luck. I'm looking forward to it.
Same here.
Thank you very much. And look at that, a man of his word. A couple weeks later, here he is.
That's going to be...
Now, so you talk, I want to know more, because obviously you are educated, but obviously that hasn't been your focus. What have you learned over the past few months since you met me, you met Erin Phillips, you went to this event? What do you think? Sisolack is obviously not doing the job. I mean, it's getting worse. It's not getting better. What would you do different? What do you think would help education in Nevada?
Well, the first fallacy, I think, and you mentioned Governor Sisolack, is just throwing more money at the problem.
There's plenty of money. CCSD has plenty of money.
That's not how you solve these problems. So, when I talk about the stakeholders, so just so you know, this is the plan that we have. I'm still on the listening tour. I'm paying attention to everybody, and that's why I went to the event. we're going to put all the stakeholders in the room, right? And everybody. No one is not going to get invited.
Right.
Everybody gets into the room.
Everyone from the socialists to the homeschoolers.
It doesn't matter, right?
Right.
Because we all have to solve the problem. We're going to define the problem, and we're going to say, okay, let's talk about solutions here. I want to hear about every one of you what you think is a solution. And then we're going to debate. And then as the leader, you then get to decide and make a judgment call on what you're going to try to solve. I come in, admittedly, with a bias. I like choice.
Right.
I like kids.
Classical education.
Classical education, the 3 R's. If we have time, I'll tell you my 3 R story later. I believe in the money following the kids. So there are some things that come in, but I also believe that teachers have the best of intentions, and they want to do a good job.
Most of them do.
And I want to recognize them, correct?
Right.
And
and unhandcuff them.
I
mean, there's just so much responsibility for teachers to do, whether it's paperwork or administrative duties, when really most of these teachers have a passion for it and have a plan.
Yes.
They might not follow that lesson plan or this particular thing. Yeah. The bottom line is, are you effective as a teacher? Let them spread their wings.
Exactly. And I try to make that point, and I hope it gets across. It's very easy to say, this is my solution and I'm going to do it now. Here, now, today.
Right.
Well, guess what? I'm not a governor yet. And when I am governor, I will pay attention and I will solve and I will make commitments to the people. For example, when I'm done with these meetings, I'm going to say we're going to be number 29 in 4 years.
Measurable
goals. Management by objectives.
Right.
You know why that works? Because it's then beyond me. It's not just me. You think somebody else running after me is going to say, oh, no, I want to be number 29?
Right.
There's going to be a blueprint.
Right.
If you follow it, we're going to get there.
And that's one of the problems I have with the Democratic Party in general, is they love fighting these immeasurable things like climate change or racism, where you can't ever say mission accomplished. There's no measurable metric. You even with COVID, it was pretty easy to say, all right, when we get to X amount per 100,000 or this, they would never give you that number. They would never explain to you, what are we working towards? When do we know we won?
Exactly. And that's why I talk about common sense and practicality, right? You have to people understand common sense. Our voters understand common sense. Our population understands common sense.
So do our politicians?
No, it's obvious because you see it. You see
right.
It never comes
It doesn't
out.
make sense.
It's just, and if you speak straight to the voters, they'll understand what you're saying. So I don't want to dodge the question. We are going to have solutions to education. I think if Aaron's initiative. By the way, Aaron to me was just like a venture capital deal, right? I met Aaron. I heard her story. Of course, we all love our kids. We want our kids to do well. That's the most important thing in the world, right? How we treat our most vulnerable is who we are as a society.
They need seed money.
So Aaron was a great CEO. I seeded her. There's going to be more, and we're going to be right there with her.
If she continues to accomplish what she set out and what she told you she was going to do, then we'll keep going.
Just imagine how easy the baton is going to be. I become governor. The initiative passed. It's just a matter of making it happen.
Right.
The people have spoken.
I have... you talk something that the Johnny Bru Show talks about a lot. I define conservatism as... less government domestically, America first internationally, and a love of our founding documents.
Yes.
You're one of the first people. I mean, everybody I have on talks about small government and conservatism, but you list it as a platform.
Yes.
Small government. What does small government mean to you?
It starts with transparency, right? Because once people figure out what government is doing and how it's doing it, they're going to realize that we have way too many layers in way too many places, and it's costing us way too much money. Once we have that, then we can start peeling those layers and still have the same exact service, if not better service.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, we are
streamlined.
We're going to streamline things. So we know how to do. So that's going to be the first thing, streamlining. Just make it work in a way that's very, very efficient, and you can do that.
And easy to understand.
And easy to understand for everybody.
Right.
Everybody can get on and
whether
understand.
you're opening a business or you need to get food stamps or you need to get medical care.
Or you're going
all those three things are like nightmares for the typical person.
DMV.
Right.
Right. I mean, people dread going to that place.
When it doesn't have to be that way.
It doesn't have to be. And there are some states in America where it's not that way. So we're going to learn. So again, so streamlining, making it more efficient, smaller. Regulations. Why does it take an electrical shop 6 weeks sometimes to get an answer when they're trying to get a permit for something? We can do better than that. Of course we have to do better than that. So let's just get these things done. So regulation is crucial. One of the most important things is that if you let small business and you untie their hands, all business, they're going to thrive. If
and
they thrive,
innovation occurs.
Innovation occurs, and people do their job, and people hire more, and it's a virtuous cycle.
Right.
So when I talk about, that's what I mean. It's going to be transparent initially because you got to know what you're cutting, right? A lot of people come in and say, "Oh, we're just going to cut." You just can't cut and pick a number out of the air. You got to see what you're cutting and how you're cutting it.
Right. And
Once
how
we
it will
have that-
affect it and where we will pick up the slack.
Exactly.
I mean, are you a big Trump supporter?
I have been a big policies of President Trump supporter.
Because one of
Sure.
one of my favorite policies of Trump is every time you want to introduce a regulation, you better introduce, I think it was
1 to
4
3.
or 5.
1 to 3.
Right.
I paid attention.
Yeah,
I was paying attention.
I was going to say
like,
too.
Thank you.
Yeah, every time you introduce a regulation, you got to get rid of 2 more.
Exactly.
And I thought that was beautiful.
Brilliant.
Sometimes
Brilliant.
cars cost more because they have regulations in the 90s, which are redundant regulations because now all cars have airbags. So we don't need to have the or what, I don't know, I'm just picking
Well,
something.
they make it additive. And I think in his case, his policies were amazing for our country. Hey, results talk.
Right.
Did you see the unemployment rates
Right.
when he was in charge?
Well, Biden has similar unemployment rates right now.
Oh, yeah.
But they say that if they measured unemployment the way they did in 1990, the unemployment rate would be like 33%.
Yeah.
But people who stopped looking for a job are no longer considered unemployed.
And how about the minority unemployment rates under President Trump?
Yeah.
Never. And by the way, it showed in the voting patterns, right?
Well, you could see
Oh
that.
my gosh, the Hispanics voted.
And that's what's
well,
crazy
heck yeah.
is they always said if less than 90% of black people ever voted Republican, Democrats would lose all their power. They've done that. I mean,
It's
now the
happening.
black population, I think it's 86% or 84%, and it keeps going down. The Hispanic population is approaching 50%.
And if we're smart on our side, we're going to continue that.
And capitalize
And
on
we're going
that.
to continue and capitalize on that side. And President Trump started it.
Right.
Remember the famous "What do you have to lose"? That was his comment.
Right, because
In
for
Detroit, what do you have
40
to lose?
years in Chicago, right,
Yeah, what
it's
do you
been
have
getting
to lose?
worse and worse and worse for the minority community.
Exactly.
What have you got to lose?
Exactly.
And then you talk about the division, whether it's, because you talk about, for example, taking advantage and capitalizing on, whether it's the African American community or the Hispanic community moving over to the right side, and the lack of division. I don't think could be considered pandering when you're talking about liberty and less regulation. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, we're going to give you more welfare, or we're going to give you more advantages, or we're going to promote equity. You're saying, let's give everybody a fair shake, let's have freedom. So comment on, how does Sisolack sow division? How are our opponents sowing division, which is obviously destroying our country?
To me, it's a sensitive subject, because the second you start putting people in buckets and having different classes of people, you're beginning to sow division, because you're now encouraging people to think that they're different for better or for worse, usually always for worse. So to me, I don't understand why our politicians and actually participate in that exercise, other than it's about results, getting results. So I need to, we're going to run a very clean campaign. I would criticize Sisolack and anybody else when they've done something wrong, and I think it is. When it comes to these concepts of, they did this, I'm not going to go there.
Right, like calling them a socialist or calling somebody else a rhino, that's not your bag.
We're not going to.
But if you're talking about a vaccine mandate or a mask mandate, you'll gladly point that out.
And just one quick thing on, my video mentioned CRT. So, and I got a lot of people got very upset at me because of that comment. I know many people all over, in the United States. So to me, what it feels like, what I say is, it's racial Marxism, right? So what did they do in Marxism? It
was critical theory economic classes.
The classes, right? Now it's all about this. What happens? What worries me is that the second you go down that path, you end up balkanized, and when you're balkanized, what happens? You have war.
Right.
We don't want to go there. So to me, just that alone is why I accepted to make that comment.
Right.
It was that let's not divide ourselves based on Marxism.
Right. Well, if
In
we
this case,
continue
applied
to
race.
divide ourselves, we become the super minority. The individual. The individual is the super minority. I mean, you break down all my boxes from Japanese, German, tall, skinny, math. The more
Black hair.
and
Yeah,
next
yeah.
thing you know, you got
Yeah,
John
you're-
Brookhagen. You got
Exactly,
me. I mean, that's the
exactly.
minority. Nobody's like me.
Yeah. So that's why we have to get away from that, and that's why I bring it up. And then interestingly, I was in a cab with a Lebanese driver one time, and he said, "Sir, this is feeling like home." This is recently, 6 months ago. You know how that broke my heart?
Right.
This is feeling like home.
I've heard Chinese communist defectors. I've heard Russian defectors. I've heard many people
Venezuelans.
saying, right, and saying this is what it was like.
Yeah. That's what we ran away from.
Right.
And they want to bring it back.
And then you have these people from all over the world who found a better life here, just like yourself, and they're screaming bloody murder, trying to warn everybody, and they're just like, "Oh no, you're a racist."
Exactly.
Wait, I'm a Chinese immigrant. What are you talking about?
That's why I'm here, John. I had to have the courage to step up and say, you're going to call me names, but this is the time to do this because we need to save this amazing melting pot that we have.
So you consider yourself a constitutionalist?
Of course.
What does that mean?
To me, it means there's a constitution. It's just like the Bible, you know. The Bible is not a la carte, right? You can't say, "Oh, I'm going to follow this one, but not." Oh,
Matthew, but not James.
Commandment number 4, yeah, but number 7, not me. You
Right.
can't
Well,
do
that's
that.
like Amendment 1, Amendment 2.
Right. So the Constitution is the same way. It's a document
It's
that
all.
exists. It says it's very clear.
And easy
You
to
know,
understand.
and
Not
easy
like
to-
the Nevada Constitution. The Nevada, have you read that thing? Holy cow.
Some pieces of it.
Oh my
I
God,
looked
you
at
got to
some
read the whole
pieces of it.
thing.
Okay, okay.
But I got you
That's my
homework.
Okay,
yes,
homework.
yes.
Okay.
But the United States Constitution, it's a
Yeah.
relatively easy read,
It's
and
very
you can
clear.
understand it.
It's clear, and it tells you how to do things and when you should do them. So I consider myself the same way I do with the Bible, which is like, it's a document, you follow it, no questions asked. I don't need the details and the nuances. People always give me details and nuances. I'm like, there's no detail and nuance, right?
Right. Shall not be infringed. We don't need nuance.
Stealing is stealing.
Right.
Right? It's not like, well, you were hungry that day or whatever. It's just,
Right.
that's how it is.
Right.
That's the Constitution for me.
Right, and that's one other thing. You had AOC the other day saying, these people are stealing in order to get diapers for their babies. They're stealing $200,000 Gucci bags
bags.
off the top of the thing.
Yeah.
Is that so they have somewhere to put the diapers?
Yeah, exactly.
Come on. And then you talk about elections. I noticed you did have one quote here on one of your press releases.
Yeah.
It said, the highly respected Heritage Foundation recently released its election integrity scorecard. According to Heritage, the scorecard ranks states based on how well they protect the security and integrity of the election process. Nevada finished 50th of 51 listings. We made it to the top 50 finally.
One more.
Following immediately behind California, which they're trying to federalize California's election process, which that blows my mind.
Yeah.
Nevada voters, this is your quote, Nevada voters deserve so much better. There is an embarrassment for our state. Governor Sisolack's terrible leadership at the behest of progressive pressure from legislators in Carson City on election integrity has left gaping holes in our system and left the very process of voting exposed and vulnerable to more fraud. Are you referring specifically to mail-out ballots and ballot harvesting?
That's definitely in there. That's one
And
of the
so
things.
expand. Tell
So
us
it's-
exactly what you
It's
mean.
the famous AB 321, right? So they passed something because of COVID, which at the time, you had to make people able to vote.
And then the
people were
conspiracy
scared.
theorists said they're going to try to make this permanent, and they
Which
all
they
got...
did, and he voted for. So when it comes to election integrity, Governor Sisolack and his legislature, Democrats, are the gift that keeps on giving. They
To the
keep
Democratic Party.
The Democratic, right? They keep making us 50th in everything.
Right.
Education, election integrity. So you can't change the rule midway through a crisis, and then apply the same exact rule when there's no more crisis.
Right.
That's just fairness, right? So a lot of people that are in my position want to get into the details of the amendment number 2 of number 4. Hey, I'm speaking to the people.
Right.
They changed
right.
the
You're
rules.
not on the floor of the legislature right now. Right now, let's talk big picture. What do we need
This is to
done?
your listeners, right? They did something. They changed. We were not quite comfortable with the change, but we accepted it because there was a crisis. The crisis is over. If you want to do real election reform, that's not how you do it, the way they did it. You don't apply what you did the last time.
Right.
But so then now I know their intentions. They
Right.
think this gives them an advantage, and that's why they're doing it.
Well, I know some people were unhappy when you said something to the effect that, like, the 2020 election is over, we need to move on.
Yeah.
Now, do you believe that everything was on the up and up? I mean, you have people like Stavros Anthony. I don't know if you know him.
I know
who
him,
lost by
sure.
10 votes after, 150 votes were cast, and he was ahead until the 14th day after the election. They said, oh, you lost by 10, and now we're closing the books.
Yeah.
You talk about Trump, whether he deserved our 6 electoral votes, or you talk about Arizona. You want to clarify what you meant. Do you believe that things were legitimate? What did you mean by we need to move on, as in forgive and forget?
No, I meant this is a good question because you're right. I did get some flack. What I meant was, if you and I keep talking about the Cincinnati Rams game, that there was pass interference, how are we fixing the next game next year when we go back to the Super Bowl and we're Cincinnati? There probably was pass interference,
right?
And that, I think I saw it,
right.
Twice the guy got calls,
right?
But my comment was to a reporter, I'm going to win next year's Super Bowl, and that's what I'm going to work on right now.
Do you think a Republican can win?
Yes.
I mean, with the ballot harvesting, the mail-out ballot, we're not going to be ballot harvesting up in Winnemucca, going to 5 different ranches to ballot harvest. They go to an apartment complex, or they go to the weeklies, or they go to the, the high, the low-income, high-rise projects, and they get 1,000 ballots. To do that in Winnemucca, it would take you 3 months.
It's a great. Okay, so if you followed California, where this whole thing started, again, we always try to copy them. I don't know why.
I know why. It keeps you in power if you're a Democrat.
Awful that they do that. But the 16 election in I think 16 election in California, they had ballot harvesting the first time, and they took all of Orange County. The Blues did.
Right.
Our guys figured it out by 2020, and we got half of those back, and plus one. So I'm going to use a sports analogy. Whatever you change the rules,
you got to play within those rules.
But then the first team that figures it out wins. But then the other 29 teams figure it out, and then they start winning again.
Right.
So our side in Orange County figured out ballot harvesting. Our side in this state, we're talking to the RNC right now, they're doing a lot of work.
Are they? Because I was going to say, I've been seeing a lot of advertisements for precinct captains and poll watchers and phone call makers. I don't see any advertisements coming from, the Clark County Republican Party or the National Nevada GOP for saying we need ballot harvesting.
There's an RNC going on.
Well,
right
that's
now.
the National Republican
Party.
Party.
But the RNC here.
Right.
The RNC people here, Joe Weaver's guys.
Okay.
They're actually working on this right now. And there are ways to figure that out. I have a.
And Joe Weaver, if you want to tell us more about your ballot harvesting plans, while we don't agree with it, we need to play within the rules. It's as if they introduced passing in the NFL, and we're like, no, this is a running game. I don't want to throw the ball.
Exactly.
Well, they're throwing the ball, so we need to learn how to throw the ball.
That's the analogy that I use, which is that but we can't. You see, it doesn't mean we're not going to change the law, right? I get back in, and we're going to change our electoral laws. I don't know exactly. I don't want to telegraph.
Make a promise that you can't keep.
And
either.
I don't want to telegraph. Most importantly, I don't want the other side to know what I'm going to do.
Right, because I want you to promise that we're going to have an election day, not an election month, and we're going to have ID, and we're going to vote in person, and that's what I want you to promise right now.
Well, let me promise you voter ID right now, and let me tell you why. And please bear with me.
The floor is yours.
I'm a guy who loves to answer questions. And when I feel I'm not answering a question, I always get so I'm mad at myself because I want to make sure I answer this question to you. But let me tell you my voter ID question, okay? So voter ID. Why am I against voter ID? Because we're going to go back to my story. When I was 12 years old, my dad was going to vote, and my mom. And we lived in the city, and we voted in the mountains. That's you vote in the village that you're from.
Oh, even if you move.
Even if you move.
Okay.
Okay. because that's where the documents are.
Right.
So my dad put mom, dad, 3 kids in the back seat, 12, 9, and 6. And we go up to the mountains, and we're stopped at a PLO checkpoint because they were around.
Right.
And when we get to the PLO checkpoint, my younger sister tells my mom, Mama, hide your cross. So, because
Right.
they stop us. They get us out of the car. They search the car like mom, dad, and 3 kids are a danger. Fine.
Right.
They look at everything and then, gruffly, okay, get out of here. So this is our country.
Right.
They're guests. Fine.
Okay.
Go up to the mountain. We vote. Come back down. Same exact thing on the way down. Mom, hide your cross. I get home. I'm 12 years old. To my dad, why did you do this? Why do you risk our lives to go vote? My dad said, because we need to be heard. We have to earn the votes. Our politicians need to know how we feel about things. So when someone tells me that they don't want to show a voter ID, I'm offended.
Right.
And I'm hurt because my dad risked his family. Get off the couch.
Right.
Show
Go
your
to the
voter
DMV.
ID.
Go do something.
Get off the couch. Go and vote with a voter ID. I don't want to hear about this ever. And that's my personal feeling. So I'm going to be when the time comes and I'm governor.
Right.
Listen, these are issues that I take very strongly.
Well, and they're talking about the I forget the guy's name, the John Lewis voting reform act that
sure.
they're trying to do. That please God, let us continue for like 6 more months, and they can't pass it.
Manchin.
Yeah, thank you, Manchin and Cinema, of
Yeah.
course. But why does it have to be so easy? I mean, I understand everybody should be able to vote, but Democrats keep saying that this is Jim Crow 2.0. When show me somebody who can't vote. I don't know who can't vote.
No
when you talk about, say, your story and your family, and you're talking about going through PLO checkpoints, you could say, listen, I need to be able to vote in this city so I don't have to risk my life getting killed with the PLO.
Yes.
These people are saying, I need a month to vote.
To vote. And I don't need to show who I am.
And I could just give it to some guy who knocks on the front door?
So again, it's got to be common sense. If you see the polls, a majority of minorities, a majority of everybody.
Right, Democrats, minorities, everybody. So it's like 83% approve of voter ID.
So again, I'm governor. I know that I have 80% of the people behind me.
So nobody's going to be...
So we're not, we're going to fix that problem. No question. And by the way, I'll be communicating with the people directly because that's what I do.
All right, so let's get to the campaign. I mean, obviously, we got 9 or 10 people in the campaign. As of right now, you're not listed in the top 5. Depending on which poll you look at, we got Lombardo, who's the current sheriff. We have Dean Heller, who is a guy who's been in politics for quite a long time. He was Secretary of State. He was a councilman. I think he was a United States Senator even. And then we have John Lee, the Democrat-Republican, mayor of North Las Vegas. And then you have Joey Gilbert, the firecracker, and Michele Fiore. Sometimes people tend to conflate the two. I don't know if they're going to be stealing votes from each other.
Lane.
Right, and they're great, rah-rah, conservative, let's get something done, which I can appreciate a lot more than somebody who's a little bit more typical of the politics that we've had for the past 10, 15 years.
Sure.
And then we get into you and Dr. Fred Simon.
Sure.
First of all, I've seen some of your ads, and you talk about going into things with a plan. And after learning about you and seeing you outline, listen, I have a plan. I couldn't get into Stanford. I'm in Stanford. I couldn't start my own venture capital firm. I started my own venture capital firm. I can't be a gazillionaire. I'm a gazillionaire. All right, so you can do that, and you say you got a plan, and I believe you. I mean, I could tell you're a smart dude, and you do have a plan. Does your plan include being where you are now? And what are you going to do? Because it's 3 months. I mean, it's game time.
First, this is, again, these are very important questions. If you look at the last debate, that was the CCRP debate.
Right, I didn't see all of that one, but I did see some of it.
The results, I was number 4.
Right. But these results, I don't love these results only because a lot of times people will bring in their own people.
But that's what I mean. I brought nobody.
And you
And I
still
was
came
number
in
4.
fourth.
See what I mean?
And you didn't buy 12 tables.
I did not. I didn't even have one table. People ask me how many tables I got. None. Jake was at one table and that was it. So that's the
You
first
had one seat.
So one seat. so that's 4. We bought one table and we had like 6 people, I think.
Right.
Anyway, the point is I got 4th. More importantly, when you're looking at data that's important, favorability, unfavorability ratio, we kick it in that territory. I'm 5-1, which is unheard of in politics.
Right.
Most importantly, that debate, they asked which candidate you had never met before impressed you the most.
Right.
By
a long shot.
57 votes, 33%. The next person was 20 or something. So something is happening, and we're seeing it happen. So now we talk about polls. I'm fortunate that I can run internal polls. I know what people are thinking.
Right.
I wouldn't be telling you this if I didn't, you
No.
know me well enough.
Right,
that
right.
I don't
I'll take
BS,
your word.
right?
I don't think you're trying here to just flat out lie about something.
Every expert, so that's our polling, we know where we are. Every expert or pundit you talk to, you say, who are the top 3 candidates on the Republican side? 2 of them always change. 1 of them never changes, me. So it's always the Lombardo, Heller, Guy. Joey, Guy. There's always the Guy in there. Why? Because I'm the X factor. They don't know what we're going to do. They don't know when we're going to do it. And they know that we can, and they know that we are, and they see me everywhere.
Right.
I'm working this.
But we're past halftime.
We're past halftime, and you know what? I'm down by 10 points. That's nothing. I'm Tom Brady.
Well, I mean, if you look at a poll, some polls have Lombardo as high as 33% and you as low as 1%. That sounds like 31 points.
So that particular poll, if you had a lot of time, I could explain. So, you're a smart guy.
Right. And I know you can lie with math. I mean, I'm aware.
You're a math guy. Okay. Registered Republican voters. How many registered Republican voters actually vote in a primary?
Right.
So this is the kind of stuff where this kind of polling is irrelevant.
Well, it's relevant to public perception. I mean, people might love you and think, he doesn't have a chance to win, so why am I going to waste my vote?
If you need to fundraise. If you don't need to fundraise, which in our case we're fortunate, but we are fundraising because we need to show.
Right.
But you're right. I think if the perception is he can't win, then that's been my biggest problem.
I think you're awesome, at the same time, I need a Republican to win. You know what I mean? And I don't want Joe Lombardo. So I might like you. Say I like you better than Joey Gilbert. Yeah. But Joey Gilbert's polling at 13% or something, and you're polling or perceived to be polling at 1%. I might like you better, but I don't want Lombardo, so I'm going to jump on the Joey Gilbert bandwagon in order to get him over Lombardo because I don't want to waste my vote on the 1%er.
So we have 90 days or whatever the number of the days are to show at least 1 or 2 to show the momentum 1 or 2 things. We have a big bunch of events coming out. Big announcement type of a thing coming out very, very soon. And that's going to start moving the needle. What we're finding out is that, as you just said, when I get out and people meet me, that perception is quickly changed. Right. So we have to be, and now remember, I have to wait.
You have to meet a lot of people.
Which we have. But the important thing, too, is remember the filing is March 18.
Right.
By March 18, I'm going to know exactly how many votes I need to win this race.
And then we're in the 4th quarter.
And I'm going to know where they are. Okay, and I'm going to have the ball.
Right, because that's your thing. Analytics, data, yada, yada, yada.
And we're using, it's funny, I like you and I want to tell you things, but I'm,
nobody's listening. Nobody watches.
I don't want to show my game plan.
Right, no, I understand.
Please know that
you have a plan.
You called it. There's analytics. I have the best analytics firm in the country working for me right now.
Is that a political analytics firm or is that a non-political analytics firm?
They're I'll give.
Like you got your own mathematicians?
No, I'll give one hint. They were working with Youngkin, who is exactly my profile.
Right.
Okay, so they know exactly where he had to go, and I'm gonna know after March 18 exactly where I need to go.
Youngkin used a lot of his own money. How much of your own money are you willing to use?
What it takes.
I've heard you quoted as saying you're willing to put in millions. I mean, I also saw that the 2021 budget stuff, you raised like 1.3 million, but if I'm not mistaken, 1.2 million of it was your own money.
Yes.
I mean, again, you're definitely not hurting for money. Are you willing to spend 5 million, 15 million, 50 million?
So this is very important to me in so many ways. I will do what it takes for us to win. However, I don't want to be the rich guy who buys it.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I could tell from your campaign
it's
ads,
crucial.
the way you come here,
It's crucial.
you're not pulling up in a Rolls Royce. You're not wearing a $10,000 suit. Yeah, you got an Apple Watch. My watch might be the same price as your watch. So, but how much? What's your ceiling? If you think you can win,
There's no ceiling.
so if you think that $100 million will be the difference between you winning and not winning, no problem.
If I think the big thing is if I think.
Right, you don't want to
because
throw $100 million down the toilet.
It's not my culture as a
But
venture
if you
capitalist.
knew that $100 million would win it for you,
So when we do the analytics, which is in 3-4 weeks,
Right.
and they say, okay, boss, this
Some
is
math nerd says
this is the number.
it's going to cost you this, and
I'm going to
you
research
will
that
win.
number myself, and then like I always do, I'm going to discount it because that's what I do as a venture capitalist.
How about $80 million?
You tell me you're going to sell $80
Right,
million as a product.
Can't
I'll
we
tell
do
you,
this
give me a budget
like
at 50.
Trump getting the embassy in Jerusalem and everything he did? He's like $10 billion for an embassy. I'll give you $10 million.
I'll build it.
Right.
Anyway, so it's going to be that. So we're going to have that number. We're going to discount it, and I'm going to say, okay, let's go.
All right. I heard you bring up, you call the vaccine gene therapy, which is what I've been referring to it as. Is that, do you believe it's a vaccine, or do you believe it's a gene therapy? Or, you know more about, medicine in terms of big picture economics.
We got stuck as a country in a silly debate about science that we should have never done, and what people call it and how they call it, and
Right, and changing definitions.
Vaccine has to do something that it's supposed to be doing, and we still don't know if the mRNAs that we have actually do that or not.
Right.
Okay, so that's why I try not to get involved in, again, like all
The semantics.
the semantics, and because I'm about the people need something simple.
Right.
So to answer your question, I'm happy they exist, because they wouldn't have otherwise. If we didn't have President Trump in place, I don't think we would have had the one that we have. So that's very important. I think the FDA actually went way out of their comfort zone to get this approved.
Right.
So, but let's wait for definitions before we see exactly what they look like, and let's wait for what we've always called something. Let's call it something when the time is right.
Awesome. Well, we've covered everything.
Sure.
I'm in trouble because we're over time already.
Okay.
But what I want to give you an opportunity is, please talk to the listeners. Let them know why you're the right man for the job.
So I'm fortunate that we covered a lot of this here in our discussion today. So you are choosing a chief executive officer for your state. This is the one position in politics where you need the best possible manager. Hopefully you've heard enough about my background, and if you haven't, please check it out. In the business world, you've heard how I can put groups together. You've heard how I can fight for my stakeholders and shareholders. You've heard about how my everything that I've got, all my resources are going to be put to make this state successful. So please think about it. Think about me. I think and voting for me, I do have a chance. You're going to see me very, very soon. I have the plan. It's in place. Just like they said, I wouldn't get into Stanford. I wouldn't be a venture capitalist. They're saying, oh, the numbers don't work in your favor. If anybody's interested, we have all the data. We can show you why that's not the case. It's Guy, G-U-Y, pronounced Guy. The website is Nohra, N-O-H-R-A for NV.com. I am humbled by the donations I'm getting, which they don't list, by the way, which are small money donations from people all across the state. And I will earn this every single vote, and I will show you that I'm the right person for you. So please keep me in mind, and we're going to take this all the way to November, and we're going to turn our state red.
Well, everybody's asking, who is this guy? Or who is this guy? And I think we addressed that. What was I just going to say? You were just saying something as far as, when can we start to see this? I don't want you to tip
Sure.
your cards, but when can people expect to be inundated with this guy?
After March 18, we're going to know who the competition is. We're going to know exactly what number of votes we need, and that's when we're going to be coming after you.
So the end of March, we need to build up some support now,
Yes.
get on the train, get on the
Exactly.
bandwagon before it becomes a bandwagon.
Exactly.
And then at the end of March, we're going to start seeing some
seeing it everywhere.
fireworks.
Absolutely.
You're going to be on TV.
Everything.
You're going to be on the news.
Everything you can.
You're going to be on Facebook and TikTok.
Do you remember the initial video that we did?
Yep.
Okay, it's going to be this on steroids.
You're going to have your movie trailer guy.
Can you say that on TV?
It's going to be lit.
Yes.
All right. Well,
All right.
guys, we are continuing to try to turn Nevada red. Guy here has, thrown his hat in the ring only, not to make money, but purely to change the culture of our seemingly blue state and our seemingly blue country. So we really appreciate you coming on. Guys, if you want this coverage, you got to hit the subscribe button. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Rumble, YouTube, Facebook. Hit up Facebook, Common Sense Nevada, which is the public square where we could all share our ideas and have some free speech platforms, at least as much as Facebook allows us to. If you're looking at the school board races, the new CCSD Board of Trustees is where we're locating all our educational content. And please, we have so many incredible interviews coming up. Tomorrow, we have, oh my gosh, I forgot. Dr. John Petrick. One of the most interesting and exciting interviews. I wasn't expecting a lot. I was preparing for Guy's interview all week. I got started with this guy, John Petrick. What an interesting dude. He's a doctor as well. He's got a lot of great ideas. He's running for assembly. So everything from local to statewide to federal. We had Sherelle Mendenhall on last week. Guys, we're giving you all the constitutional conservatives so you can get to know them. And we need you guys to register Republican so we can get the right guy in office in June, or get the right guy on the ticket in June. So that way we could get the right guy in office in November. Let's turn Nevada red in 2022. All right, this is brought to you by Infinity, the Math Institute. You can look them up on themathinstitute.com. Once again, Guy, thank you so much for spending the day with us. We really went through everything, and I think that we really got a chance to get to know you, and we really like what we heard. God bless your plight from Lebanon to your family in California, coming out to Nevada. And thanks for spending the time with us, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, John.
All right, my name is John Brookhagen. This is the Johnny Bru Show, and we'll see you tomorrow morning with Dr. John Petrick. Thanks so much for watching.